Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio, podcast, and television show. I'm your host, life coach Myrna Young, and sitting in the guest chair today is an old friend of mine, Sabrena Songowa. Sabrena has written a new book called David's Deception, and today we are going to be talking on the topic, the journey to self-love and acceptance. Welcome, Sabrena.
Hi, Myrna. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. Good to have you back on the show. I think you've been on the show in the beginning of my show, like in 2016 or something, right? This is your second
Yes,
time here, right?
yes. I think that show was talking about values, self-values. Those are two
Yeah,
big
right. I didn't even go all the way back there, but I'm sure that I had you on the show before. So that's amazing. So Sabrena is a returning guest. All right. So let me give you guys a brief introduction. Coach Sabrena J. Songowa is a transformative force in the realm of personal and spiritual development. Since founding SJI Consulting Services in 2016, she has dedicated herself to helping individuals break free from defeated mindsets, past hurts, and negative self-truths. Sabrina has hosted purpose coaching workshops, delivered corporate lectures, and inspired audiences with her most requested talk, How to Discover Your Purpose and Pursue It. And as I mentioned before, Sabrena is now the author of the new book, David's Deception. So awesome. Well, I've had the pleasure of reading your book, Sabrena. A very excellent book, very well written. It's one of, those stories that you want to turn the page. So it was excellent. It's almost like my book. When I wrote my book, people would say that they want to finish it in one sitting because they can't wait to see what happens next. So I
Mhm.
appreciate writing like that. All right, so let's dive right in, Sabrena. In your book, David's Deception, you shared a story of deception from your 6-year relationship with the father of your 3 children.
Mhm.
What was the inspiration for writing this book and sharing such a personal story?
Well, I started writing the book about 17 years ago. At that time, I was very hurt, very angry, and I just wanted to vent, right? So it started out as a man hater book. I just wanted the world to know this is what this man did to me. And after I wrote the book and reading it over, it just didn't feel right in my spirit. Like, do I really want to release so much like anger into the world? So I kind of sat on it. I left it on the shelf. And throughout the years, as I went on my own journey of, healing and self-discovery, I went back to the book and I was able to see the story from a different perspective. So although it's called David's Deception, when I looked at the story again, it was like, well, did he deceive me or did I deceive myself? So when I was able to see myself in the story, then I knew it was time to share the story so that other women and men as well, but other women can see themselves in their story.
Yeah, that is very true because a lot of times that's actually a very good point. Because a lot of times because now you're a coach, Sabrena, so you
Mhm.
know that people that come to us, they normally have blind spots. They don't
Yeah.
see unless, someone has to point it out to them. And what I picked up in the book as well is because, you saw what you wanted to see, and which is what a lot of women do, right?
Mhm.
They ignore the red flags, they excuse it. You know what I mean? So for you to circle back and say, was it David's deception or did I deceive or Sabrena deceiving herself? That's
Mhm.
actually a very good spin. So can you expand on that? Why do you think that you deceived yourself?
Yes. So throughout the story, I kind of reflect back on, I shared my thought process at certain points in the story of like I felt fortunate enough to be with this person, right? Because I thought so low of myself at the time. And although he definitely, if once you read the book, you will see that the red flags are glaring. I didn't see it, or maybe I pretended not to see it.
Right.
So at the point in the story where I was having like a moment of realization, like, did he really deceive me, or was the writing on the wall the entire time? Was it David's deception, or did I deceive myself to think that just being connected to another man or someone else can make me whole, can fill the void that I held inside. So I deceived myself into thinking as long as I have this relationship, then I will feel better about me, which in the end, that was never true, never the case, can never be, right? No one else can make you feel good about you. Only you can do that.
Yeah, that's actually very true. And a lot of women do that, especially in the culture that we have right now where, men are scarce. Women, men are scarce and women still feel that they need a relationship to complete them. I mean, that hasn't gone away. You know what I
No.
mean? When, Tom Cruise said that in that movie, "You complete me," every woman grabbed onto that. Yeah, they want someone to complete them, so and that's the reason that we ignore the red flags. So yes, and the men, because they're reigning as top dog, everybody wants them. They're able to exploit that. So so the reason that we're talking today, it's not necessarily, we want people to read your book, and we want people to, women, to understand what happens when you ignore the red flags, what happens when you allow a man to deceive you, what happens when you don't hold, have boundaries, right? And put your foot down on certain things. But we're doing that because when you feel that way and you allow someone to knock down your boundaries, and you allow someone to use and abuse you, is because of your feeling of how you feel about yourself. So let's expand on that. You mentioned that the reason that you allowed David to deceive you is because of childhood hurts. So we want to go there.
Yes. Before we go there, I just want to say, of course, this is not true for all men, right? There are some really good men out there. I always say, hurt people hurt people. And a lot of times when we are broken, we attract what we are. So we attract broken men to us. And therefore, how you're trying to make yourself feel good by making the other person feel worse. And it's just feeding off of negative energy. And that was the case in my story. And there's always an underlying root cause. So once I was able to look back at my story, I realized, okay, I was broken from the start. I was broken when I met him. I thought low of myself when I met him. But why? And I kind of questioned that throughout the book, like, why do I feel this way? But I didn't really dig deeper into that. But on the other side of it, definitely, it was a lot of um, childhood wounds, things that happened in my childhood, being picked on and called names that really lowered my self-image in the way I saw myself, not really feeling that love and support always from like my parents. They were very strict, so they instilled restrictions, but they didn't give me those values, right? So I just knew I couldn't do a lot of things, but not you can't do it because you are too beautiful for that. You shouldn't waste your time with these boys. It's just like, don't talk to boys, right? So it was like they instilled restrictions, which made me feel like restricted, like something I was different, but didn't give me those values to know why you should feel different or set yourself apart. So I had a lot of, and at a young age, you're just trying to process that, and parents are parents, they do the best they could. So not blaming my parents at all. But I'm just saying that it really contributed to the mindset I had about myself at a young age and teenagehood. That's when you're trying to figure out who you are. And that's when I met him when I was a teenager. And that's why I was able to kind of latch on to him and I didn't have an identity for myself. So I wanted to kind of latch on to his identity and define myself by that relationship.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because like I had mentioned to you, you started the book when you were 17,
Mhm.
when you met David. So it didn't go into your childhood hurts, but I think you mentioned that you added a chapter on that to explain that. So let's talk about some of the hurts that women can can go into relationships with, coaching wise, if you have a coaching
Mhm.
conversation. So
Mhm.
one is a lack of self-esteem, a lack of self-worth. Um,
Yeah.
so how do you think that plays out into um, uh, allowing someone um, to deceive you?
I think that's a very important part. And one thing I mentioned a lot at the beginning of the book, before I even went into my story, is loneliness, right? It's a power all its own. We try to just fill the void in the space and time where God's trying to isolate us so we can do the work on ourselves. We try to fill that void with things, with people, with, titles and everything else. And so when you do that, you don't allow yourself time to really get to know who you are. So when you don't know who you are, you're open and vulnerable for someone else to come in and tell you who you are, who they think you are, or who they need you to be for them, right?
Yeah,
And that's
yeah,
like a lost
very true.
identity. And when you lost, when you don't know who you are, you kind of like tossing in the wind, right? So I didn't know who I was. I just knew at a certain point I needed to be, his wife, right? Because I, had kids at a young age. So it's like, if I'm not his wife, then who am I? But a
Right.
poor single mother on welfare. Who wants to be that? Um, Not realizing there was so much more to me than that. That was just one part of my life. It didn't make up my life of who I was. But it wasn't until I did the work on myself that I was able to then go back, really develop my character and my self-esteem and my values.
But that's after the relationship ended, years later,
Yes,
that you went
yeah,
back and
exactly. So
understood.
at the
Right,
time, definitely had no
right,
clue.
right. Okay, now, I think, in your story, you mentioned there was a lot of times when um you were suspicious, or you weren't getting from him. I shouldn't say suspicious. I don't think you're suspicious, but you weren't getting from him what you wanted.
Mhm.
And you stayed in the relationship anyway. So a lot of times women would say, you're not giving me what I want, so I'm going to go and look for it somewhere else, or I'm going to say goodbye. But you stayed there probably because you had two kids already. Um,
Right.
so as a coach, why do you think women stay in relationships longer than they should? And you can use your personal experience to kind of temper that.
Yes, definitely because of fear, right?
Mm,
Fear drives a lot of our bad decisions. And for myself in particular, I was afraid. I was afraid that, well, if I let go of this, and at the time I was 22 with three kids, right? So it's like, if I let go of this, then what do I have? And then no one else is going to want me with three kids at
mm,
22. My life is ruined beyond repair. Even before having kids, because in the book I detail, like before having kids, I was suspicious. I was suspicious about him and like other women and his daughter's mom. But it was like, well, if I break up with him, then who am I? I'm fortunate enough that he even chose to have me as his girlfriend. Because again, who am I? And that stems back from childhood wounds and the way I saw myself, right?
mhm.
Kind of goes full circle. If you
Yeah.
don't do the work on yourself beforehand, you get in a relationship, you still don't know who you are, then you are afraid. You hold on to that relationship, even when it's not worth holding on to. It's like you're not adding to me. But without you, who am I? So that was my underlying thought. And it took years, like towards the end of, the story, it ended on a good note, but then I actually confessed, like, although it ended this day, but it took me years, different relationships, to really understand, you got to stop. And it wasn't until maybe like 5 years ago that I decided, I need to do the work on myself before I really can be a partner to another man, right? Other than that, I'm looking for you to rescue me from me. And that's just too much anyway. And what it does is the man or woman, but because I'm talking about myself, the man sees that vulnerability in you and he sees that, oh, you don't have standards, you're kind of desperate, so he lowers his standards. He don't do all those things he was doing at first because he realized he doesn't have to put forth the effort. You're willing to take anything he throws your way, and then he just throws anything your way, and the cycle continued for years, different relationships, but same me, same brokenness that I had to deal with. And once I dealt with it, I was like, okay, I'm not accepting this from you, you know?
Right.
And
That's
that's
good.
usually the process. Mhm.
Right. Yes, that's good. I love that. Yeah, fear, definitely. Fear. Fear of being alone, a fear of maybe not being able to pay your bills, fear that no one else will want you because you have kids, and all the fear. Even if you don't have kids, you think, okay, maybe I'm too old. You put these things in your brain and you do have fear. And it is definitely, if you're going to be holding on to something that's not good, it is definitely fear. So I'm glad that you pointed that out. Now you said
And
something
what I
just
wanna
now.
add before
Mm,
you move on, sorry, what I wanna add is when we make decisions or we think about our scenario out of fear, it's always worst case, right? No one else is ever gonna want me. It's always the worst case. I'm too old. I can't. Worst case scenario. Fear never tells you anything good. When you it's not optimistic at all. So it takes you down this rabbit hole of like doom and gloom until you change that and look at it through the eyes of like faith and hope and positivity. It's like, well, I can't go back to school. I had to put the kids in daycare, but I could do it, thinking hopeful. But when you think it out of fear, it's never going to lead you to like a happy ending, right?
good. That's good. Yeah, I mean, I've been talking about fear recently on the podcast a lot. And you know, we started in Toastmasters and we talked about fear there. And I think that's when I got my acronym, fear is false evidence appearing real. So yes, it's false evidence and it's appearing real to you, but it's not true. It's not real at all. It's something your imagination is conjured up. And your imagination is always going to go to the bad. It never goes to, hey, I'm going to marry, like when I was growing up, I'm going to marry Michael Jackson. You remember those days?
Exactly. It never goes to that childhood innocence, right? That part of you
Yeah,
that was
it doesn't
hopeful.
go there, right? No, you're going to be alone and die alone and nobody's going to want you. And
The
that's what it's
cat.
telling you, right? So
Yeah.
I got that. But you said something there a minute ago that I want to circle back on.
Mhm,
And it's good for me to pick it up now, even though I was going to probably ask you later on. So when the relationship ended, and we're going to get to that in a minute,
mhm,
how it ended. Um, uh, but even though you picked yourself up, dusted yourself off, and starting on this amazing career that you have right now, um, uh, you're still saying that your subsequent relationships weren't that great and ended in failure because you're still taking you in them. So let's touch on that because you just said that a minute ago.
mhm,
How did
mhm.
that how
A
did that play out? Right.
Absolutely, because what I did after that relationship ended with David, was I put up a wall, right? And I thought it was change. And all I did was just, like, put up a barrier, wasn't who I was still, wasn't being true to myself. So now I'm just mean and and bouncing from relationship to relationship. And then
Okay.
when I found that that
You
wasn't
became
working
bitter, huh? Okay, all
and
right.
bitter, I was bitter. That's when I wrote the book initially, Out of My Bitterness, right? It probably would have been a bestseller. I was really
Right.
mad. Um, um, but that still didn't, I still felt empty. I still felt angry and void. And so then I switched and said, you know what? The next man I meet, no matter what, I'm going to make myself love him, right? Which you never should do that. And the next man I met was not someone that I should have made that commitment to. So it was like a 10-year on and off again type of thing, right? Because I was determined to prove to myself that I can be loved, someone can love me, I can win him over. And it wasn't until I was talking to a friend about it, and she was like, well, if he's not, because I was telling her he was not the man for me. But she's like, why do you keep going back to him? And I said, because he tells me what I want to hear when
Yes.
I need to hear it.
Yes.
And that revelation
So
kind of
good at
shocked
that.
me. And I was like, my truth is he tells me he loved me, he missed me. And although I know it's just words, fluff, I need to hear it. And then I sat down and said, why do I need to hear it
Mm,
from him? Why do I need to hear those words from anyone but myself? Why does that make me feel like important and loved and accepted because a man told me that he loves me? And that's when I really had to start to do the work to say, you have childhood wounds. You didn't hear this from maybe your dad. I had to
yeah.
really get down to the root of the issue in order to stop the cycle and now, happily married now, but it really did go on in different ways. First, I was mean, angry. Then I was, a pushover, just trying to discover who I am
Wow.
without actually stopping to discover who I am.
Right. Wow. Yeah, we're talking true terror. We're talking life. It happens
Yes,
all the time.
yes.
Sabrina is sharing her story, but it happens all the time. I would even put a big number on there, like 70% of the time. You know what I mean? Because you've got to do the work. And if you don't do the work, you're just reacting, you're just living, you don't understand what's going on, you're living unconsciously, and you're just creating the same thing over and over again. And it's
Mhm.
very true until you stop. And Sabrina is the woman of faith. So you probably are going to church and listening to the pastor talk about these things, and it still wasn't penetrating, right?
And to that point, I was going to church and I'm praying to God for a husband, and I'm getting angry at God for not sending me my husband. And all the while, God is trying to get me to spend time with myself
Right,
first,
so,
So it's like I was using my faith, like almost like a genie in a bottle. God,
yes,
grant me this heartfelt wish. And he's like, the way I'm going to grant these wishes, I'm going to isolate you for a season where you're not even going to date anyone
yes,
worthwhile anyway, until you stop and realize that you have to do the work on you, right? And I think that's where a lot of people kind of go wrong, where they feel like they can like pray fast and do all those things, but God is not going to give you, he wants you to have a firm foundation. And when your foundation is broken, he's gonna stop until you fix your foundation, and he's gonna put you in push you to the point where you realize you have to fix your foundation.
yes, yes. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And as coach, I always tell people that you've got to prepare yourself. You got to prepare yourself for the husband that you want, or if it's a man, I mean, I don't coach many men, but let's stick with the women. You prepare yourself for what you want. And then when you're prepared and when you're ready, I keep thinking of this analogy or this quote. It's not really perfect, but it allows you to understand where I'm coming from. When the student is ready, the teacher will prepare. It's not a perfect fit for this, but when you are ready, God will send you the husband, right? Because if
Exactly.
not, it's going to end. And then you're going to say that, so yes, you've got to be ready. You've got to be prepared. You've got to work on yourself. You've got to make yourself wife material because the guy's going to come and he's going to look at you and he's going to say, no, she ain't ready. She's not the one, right? And you might
Mhm.
miss your opportunity because he was the one, but you weren't ready. So he went his way. So it's a very good point that you have got to be ready. Right.
And one thing I hear men say all the time is that they are attracted to confidence, right? That's one thing
Yes.
my husband said when he met me. Like, I was independent, had my head on straight, and I wasn't desperate. I wasn't looking at him like I'm putting all my hopes, wishes, and dreams on this date
Right.
working out. It was just like
Right.
we're having a conversation. I'm laughing, I'm being myself. Because now I know who I am and I see the value in me. So if you don't see the value in me, okay, nice meeting you,
Get to
but
walking,
you saw
right?
the value
Yes.
in me.
Get to
But before
walking.
it's like, oh my God, I need him to it's like a job interview. I need him to hire me. Need him to
They
want
don't
me.
they don't like that. Men don't like needy women.
No,
They
no.
do not like needy women. Yes. They think confidence is sexy. Very, very true. Yes. Confidence is sexy.
And it's hard to be
Especially,
confident when you're broken. It's hard to be
right,
confident when you don't think highly of yourself, So and that's where the problem lies.
right. Yes. All right. So this brings me to one of the most important questions I'm going to ask you because it's a sad one. So, without giving too much away, David's deception takes us to the crescendo of his main deception, and you finding out that he was in a relationship with someone else, and you decided to take your life. Walk us through that.
Yeah. So at that time in the story, I had lost my job. I had my son, and then 5 months later, I had my twins. So it's really like three babies. And then I was unemployed. I moved so far away from my family, so I was isolated. And I really just was holding on to him for everything, and it's like I was ashamed of myself that I, was a single mom, on welfare at that such a young age. And I had such high hopes and dreams for my life, Um, so I felt like a failure. And in my mind, the only way to make this right, to turn this narrative into like a happy ending, is if we got married. And the more I hoped for it and the more I desperately tried, because once again, a man can see when you're desperate, the more distant he became. Um, and to the point where I was starting to think, I don't know much about him. It's been 6 years. He's still a mystery to me. I'm questioning God. I'm asking God, is he the man for me? Show me, already knowing the answer. And when you question God, you got to be prepared for his answer. Sometimes it's hard truth. And so that was his answer. He showed me that, no, he's not the man for you. He's never going to be your husband. And in that moment, I just felt like, okay, I had a very strict, childhood, like, teenage life was very strict. I looked forward to being free. And now I'm stuck, single parent with 3 kids with no job. Like, I didn't see a happy ending to my story, which is why, I made that attempt at suicide. And then I got scared and was like, you know what? I don't want to do this. And I called the ambulance. But one thing I can say, and just thinking back on it in hindsight, writing the book for me has been very therapeutic because I was able to reflect a lot on that time in my life. I didn't want to end my life. I just really wanted to live. I wanted to feel like my life was worth living. And that's a lot of people who are like feeling hopeless and in despair. They just feel like their life is not worth living. They want to live. They just don't see how that's possible at that point in their life, right? Not realizing that it's temporary. It's all temporary. It's nothing that's permanent. God can do all things. But that's what my mindset was at the time. I just didn't see a happy ending to my story.
Right, right. So yeah, so I know it seems, a 22 with 3 kids, and you recognize
Unemployed.
that the father of your kids is already in a relationship and you're not going to get married. I can understand. But I like what you did right after that. You went on to, like I said, um, uh, in the beginning, you went on and got your master's in marketing and went to school. Like you mentioned, you put the kids in daycare and go to school, because a lot of women would think, oh, I got 3 kids. How am I going to work? How am I going to go to school? How am I going to do this? But yes, just put your kids in daycare and do it and elevate yourself, and not necessarily sit around. You mentioned that you were on welfare, and do that. So talk us through the mindset shift that happened from I don't want to live to I'm going to be successful.
You know what? I always was a dreamer and like a determined person. And it felt like every time I tried to like leave Florida or move, relocate, something happened. I had to come back. I talk about it in the book. Um, But right before that incident happened, I had called school to just inquire about getting an accounting degree, because I was good at math and I thought, I can get I can get a job and that pays good money with accounting, so why not? And then the lady came by and gave me the pamphlet, and that was just God, because God knew like who I am at my core was somebody who was driven, who had desires, who wanted to be a business professional. So the girl on the cover of the pamphlet, she had looked like she was like around my age, with a briefcase. And I just kept staring at that. And I'm like, I can be her. I want to be her. That's supposed to be me. And so after, I had the incident and everybody, my family kind of rallied around me and poured into me, and my pastor came over, just reminded me like God loves you. And then my mom helped out because I didn't have a car at the time. They gave me a car. Started to become a little bit more hopeful, right? So it's good to have a support system. And for a long time, everybody kind of was like, that's her life. She ruined it, let her go. And that's why I felt so isolated. But when they realized, oh, she's about to end her life, let's help her. That kind of gave me hope. So I'm like, if everybody's willing to pour into me, what can I do for myself? And I saw that pamphlet again with the girl on the cover. I'm like, you know what? This is going to be me. I'm going to go back to school. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'll make it happen. And I worked full time. I went to school full time, and I had 3 kids. And I got actually 3 degrees now, and I got them all while raising my kids. So like, when I tell you that nothing is impossible, it's just our mindset, the barriers that we have in our mind tells us is not possible. Is it easy? No. Was it hard? No. But it was hard being stuck, not knowing how to pay
Right,
the rent, on
right,
welfare. Going back to
right.
school, I was tired, but at least it gave me fulfillment, and it helped me get to the next level.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yes, listen, congratulations on that. Congratulations on that. This is a good story. This is an
Thank you.
inspirational story that shows that we can all do it. Like, if you can have 3 kids, babies, and go to school and
It
work full
works.
time, and you're not even living with your mommy, right? You're single mom. You got to do it all. Drop into the daycare, pick them up from the daycare, get their meals, study when they go to bed. I could just imagine. I'm just laying it all out, and
Online classes, yes.
and doing it, because guess what? We have inner strength. You know,
Mhm.
we just have to tap into it. We are strong. We're not fragile. We can do it, and we are going to get to the other side. It's going to be hard when you're in the cocoon, like the caterpillar, but at some point in time, you get out of that cocoon and you fly like a butterfly. And you have done that.
Absolutely.
So I am very proud of you to have done the work on yourself. You've become a successful business person, and written your book, putting it out in the world, your story to help other women. Now you're a
Yeah,
certified coach. You've
yeah.
done it all. I love
Still
that.
climbing, but yes, when I look back from that day, wow, didn't know any of this was up ahead, but God knew,
Of
right?
course
And
not.
that's why I always say never make long-term decisions based on temporary circumstances, because
Right.
you just don't know what's up ahead. The next day,
Yes,
your life changes when you was about to end it the night before.
exactly. I just finished recording an episode before our conversation today. And it's something that I just learned, and I thought I had to teach on it. And it says that mountains are created by earthquakes. Can you believe that? So,
Love that.
yeah, isn't that amazing? And I've just finished recording an episode in that. And this is exactly what we're talking about here. You get a Cat 7 earthquake, it's knock you off your feet. But guess
Mhm.
what? That pressure allows you to build mountains. And that's exactly what you've done. You built mountains, and you're now, you're not at the mountaintop yet. I'm pretty sure you're still growing, and you're still, but you never really get there, right? So
Exactly.
the journey or the happiness is in the process of, yeah. So that is amazing. That is very beautiful. So I'm glad that you were able to do that. Now, one of the, I put a label on this conversation today, and the label that I put on it is the journey to self-love and acceptance.
Mhm.
So I know that we talked about you doing the work that you're no longer desperate, and you're doing the work where for men, as far as being the partner that a man wants. So how did you learn to love yourself, though? Walk us through that.
Mhm. You know, I learned to spend time alone with myself. That's something I still do now, even though I am married. I went to the Janet Jackson concert by myself recently, which everybody was like, "What?" And that really took me understanding you're not going to show up the way you desire to okay, let me put it this way. I had high standards for myself, right? I wanted a man that checked all these boxes, right? But then one day God told me, but do you check their boxes? Like
Mm.
someone who's, you're up
That's
here with your standards.
important. Yes.
Yes, like
Yes.
you're up here with your standards, but you don't even hold those high standards for yourself. So I had an entire year where I called it self-care season, where I really just spent time getting to know myself, understanding what I like and what I don't like, doing some like self-improvement, self-care improvements, things that like doing dental work and all that. And I even took myself on vacation, like booked a 5-star hotel. I'm like, let me do it for myself. Let me show myself that I love and value me. So that then whether God send me a husband or not, I'm happy. And I relocated, to the northern DC area, not looking for a husband. I relocated because I was ready to enjoy my life and have fun. And I was like, okay, my kids are, off onto their next journey in life. Thank God I survived parenthood. I'm ready to live. And so I relocated with no thought other than to come enjoy my life. And I met my husband just out enjoying my life. And it was just that simple where I didn't walk around looking like, are you looking at me? Do you like what I have on? Really looking for somebody to validate and accept me. I like what I have on. I, woke up this morning, I put on a pretty white dress. I did my hair. And when I met my husband, he called me an angel, and I was like,
Yes, that's what he saw, right?
yes.
Yes.
So it really was an
You
internal
are
journey.
checking
I call it
someone's
self.
boxes.
Yes,
Amazing. I love that.
exactly. I
Right.
checked his boxes. And he actually said, like, I was praying for a wife who could, who's a Christian, who can pray with me, who was headstrong, who, all the things that he was looking for. I
I
was
had
that
it.
person, but
Yes. Yes.
prior to doing self-care, I wasn't showing up as that person. He would have just walked past me on
Well,
the
he might
street.
have he might have paused and then kept
Mhm.
going because a man is attracted to your physical, and then when he starts talking to you, he recognizes right away, okay, no, 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 no. You know what I mean? But yeah, the physical always attracts them. So he would have paused and then kept going. But that is so important. We mentioned it earlier, but it's worth saying again that you have got to be prepared before God will send you the correct one. Because just like how you're looking, listen, these guys are looking too. They're no
Mhm.
longer wanting, well, I don't know. I mean, everybody is on Instagram now showing this fabulous body that they bought. And the men look at that, but they want more substance. They want
Yeah,
more
for a life
things.
partner, they look for more
Yeah,
substance.
just like you said, he wants someone that can pray with him. He wants someone that's already got her own job and confident and would add to him, instead of
Exactly.
taking from him. You would add
Mhm.
to him, like when they call a power couple, which means that each of you is contributing to the relationship. And that's what it's all about, right?
Exactly.
That's already where it's all about. So yes,
I love it.
and you have to love yourself, because if you don't love yourself, you can't give away what you don't have. Another one of my favorite quotes: you can't give
Mhm.
away what you don't have. And if you don't have self-love, then you can't love somebody. You might think that you can, but you can't really love them, because you don't have
And you
love.
can't show up as
Right.
your best,
No,
right? To
no.
your point, he wouldn't have stopped because some days I didn't show up as my best. I would just put on anything and just walk out the door, you know. And God was like,
Yeah.
"Look how you're showing up." I really had to look at myself completely from head to toe
Yes.
and say, "You know what? I see why I don't have a husband. Look at me."
Yes.
That's the hard truth and doing the work on yourself. So I'm an advocate for self care. Self care season. Take the time out and get to know you.
Yes, yes. I'm an advocate for that too, myself. I take care of my mind and my body and my spirit.
Yes.
We're all three, and I take care of them. I take care of them all, and I'm always learning. And one of the things about what we do here on this show is that we promote personal growth. Personal
Mhm.
growth is personal growth. It is self-care, it is learning, it's showing up as your best self, because you're always improving, right?
Yeah,
You're always improving.
absolutely.
And when you're improving, then, men love that, because yes, you're working on yourself. I heard someone say once that a man doesn't even care if you're overweight once you're working on it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah, you're working on it. You're going to the gym, you're trying, right? You're trying to
Mhm.
eat healthy, you're working
Mhm.
on it, right? Maybe you're not there yet, but you're working on it. But if you don't care, right? that's a turn
And
off, right?
exactly. And you package it nicely, right? You still dress nice. You still, although you're overweight, you wear clothes that complements your figure. That's
Ah,
what they look at.
right.
You
And
know?
you go to dinner and he sees you're not ordering a whole pizza and eating it. That they look at all that.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
so that is beautiful. And yeah, I was at your going away party, so I remember when you say, I'm moving to the DC area,
Mhm.
I'm gonna be coaching, and I'm gonna be having clients, and I'm gonna do. And it's the power of intention. you know
Yes.
I started rereading a book, one of the books that I love. It's The Alchemist. I think I've read it now like 3 times. So I started it this morning. And the very first thing, the author says is, that, whatever you want, the universe conspires to give it to you. You just have to know what you want. If you know what you want and you go after it, then the universe will, give it to you. And there's a scripture that says the same thing, ask and you will receive, seek and
Mhm.
you will find, knock and the door will be open to you. So we got to seek, we got to ask, and we got to knock.
And
And
we
that's
got to
what you
speak
did.
it. Yes.
And the door opened. The door
Open.
opened.
And my anniversary is tomorrow.
Yeah. And your birthday. So that's great. Yes. So
Yes.
this episode will not be airing tomorrow. But so that is amazing. Yes. All right. So this was great. Great conversation, Sabrena. Like I said,
Absolutely.
I'm proud of where you've come from and where you are and where you're heading. And so congratulations and best of luck. Now,
Thank you.
tell the listeners about your book, where they can pick it up. We know it's on Amazon. Your social media handles, your website that they can contact you, because you're now a coach.
Yes, yes. So the book is called David's Deception. It's on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles. My website, sjiconsulting.net. You can go on my website, learn more about me and my purpose coaching program. Follow me on Instagram. It's Speaker Jay on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And yeah, I pray over anyone who gets the book that, not only is it entertaining and inspiring, but I pray that if it's something that resonates with you, that you find hope out of my story and you're inspired to discover the beauty of God's purpose and his will in your own.
Beautiful. Well said. Well said. Yeah, because like you said in your bio, that your most requested talk is how to discover your purpose and pursue it.
Mhm.
And when we were friends and communicating on a regular basis, you moved away, so we really haven't kept in touch. That
Mhm.
was your ministry purpose. And I know
Yes,
you had
that's my
your
next book.
website. Yep.
Yeah.
What was that?
My next book is How to Discover Your Purpose. So yes.
Yes, exactly. I mean, that was basically your ministry and your message, and that's all we talked about, purpose.
Mhm.
And yeah, so and that's why you're successful, because you had purpose. You had something that you were working towards, and whenever you're working towards something and you have a purpose, then you 99% of the time achieve it, right?
Yes,
So,
when you're clear on what you're called to
right,
do.
right,
Well, I'm
exactly.
proud of you as well, Myrna. So I remember when you got started with your radio show, your podcast, and look at you now. So um, you exemplify what it means to be consistent and to show up and to do your best and to be rewarded for that.
Ah, thank you. Yes, I am consistent, and I do show up. So thank you for recognizing that. I love it. Yes. All right. Yes. And something, I'm just gonna say one more thing. It's like a coaching thing. I mean, one of the books that inspired me way back is when I read the book Pursuit of Happiness. And in
Mm,
there, the author, because that was a true story, by the way, the author talked about hitting the anvil, right? Where you like a blacksmith. He goes to work every day and he pounds that thing. You hit the anvil, right? You hit the anvil. And that's really how I show up. You go every day and you hit it. And if you hit it every day, then sooner or later, you're going to become successful, but you just got to do the work, right? So that's what I do. I show
Absolutely.
up and I hit the anvil.
And you hit it very well. So giving you
Ah, thank
flowers.
you.
Yes.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Awesome. All right. Well, listen, guys, I hope that you were inspired by Sabrena's story. Go pick up a copy of her book. It's very easy to remember, David's Deception. It's a good read, but the important message in the book is that even though someone can deceive you and you can feel that you don't have anything to live for, there's always something on the other end. God gives you a test so you can have a testimony. And now that hard times that Sabrena went through is now her testimony. And God is using that testimony to inspire others. So be inspired by her book. Follow her on social media. If you want coaching, then you can also connect with her on her website. I will have a transcript of my conversation with Sabrena on the show page, which is myhelps.us. And I will link out to her book. I will link out to her social media handles, and I'll link out to her website. So if you forget any of it, you can just head to the show page and link out on it and support her. So thanks again for tuning in, Sabrena. Thanks again for being on the show and sharing your story
Thanks
and
for
your
having
awesome
me.
book. As we wrap up, any last words?
No, thank you for having me. And I hope, if the book interests you, you go out and get it. It's a good read. It's a quick read, so don't have to worry about reading the book for 2 and 3 weeks. And just happy to share my story.
Yes, you're very welcome. Like I said, I read the book and it's a page turner. It's very well written. Love it. All right, guys. Well, listen, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life. I hope that your mind was transformed today on the fact that you are capable, you can do it, regardless of how bad it looks. There's always hope and light on the other side. So thanks for tuning in. Until next time, thank you, Sabrena, for being on the show. Until next time,
Thank you.
namaste.
Bye. Thank you, Myrna.
Bye.